I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims. All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays. What's going on, everyone? Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prizepicks and Game Time. And today, I'm joined by someone I've been wanting to have on the show for quite some time, so this is very exciting for me personally. Joined by Gregg Rosenthal of NFL Daily with Gregg Rosenthal. Now, Greg, I'm saying your name a lot in this intro, so apologies for that. But thank you so much for carving out the time, man. Welcome to the show. How are you doing? We're coming off the draft. It's been a while. I feel like people have gotten to sleep, go outside, talk to their significant others, all that good stuff. So are you recouped? Do you feel like you're a little bit recharged at this point?
Like a little bit, but it's in the title, daily. So this offseason's been a little different with this show. But no, I've been an admirer from afar. Tayler, you're doing great work. You got the ultimate stamp of approval, which I wasn't as familiar with you until you were on Mina's show, and I was just like, dang, I'm jealous, Mina, that you had this Tayler on. Like, how do you find such a great journalist and someone covering the Patriots? So ever since then, I've been tracking you.
It's a gracious space. Grateful for her. Again, grateful for you coming on and making the time, man. I've been following you forever at all your different stops, and just the attention to detail, the consistency. I just feel like it's a space where with so many teams, it's kind of easy to do the easy stuff, but I always appreciate how well informed you are. But I could sing your praises all show. We got to get into some Patriots talk, man. But before we do, I do have to ask you the question we ask all of our guests. Are you watching any shows, anything you could put us on to? Because during the draft, I got away from it. I just jumped into the Taylor Sheridan universe. My girlfriend and I have cleared through everything, and we are desperate for more content. So anything you could pass along.
I mean, just last night I was watching the rehearsal, the Nathan Fielder show, which is mind blowing and maybe not as insane as the previous season, but there is nothing else like it. I've been watching The Pit. I'm a little late to that, but I'm loving The Pit. As it's weird, that feels like you can turn your mind off a little bit show, and yet it's like life or death and a lot's going on, so I'm into it.
So Liz has been trying to get us to watch The Pit. I'm scared of hospitals, so I'm a little bit hesitant, but maybe it'll make me a little bit braver. Oh, I see you have an endorsement.
I do, but there's also a little bit of holding your hand up when it's getting all bloody and gory. I'm with you on that.
Okay, so I might pull away from that. But, okay, so I got that one on the list. I know Liz is going to be happy. The rehearsal, though, I've watched a few episodes. There's that one where it's simultaneously one of the most out-of-pocket episodes, but it ends with him having a sincere conversation in an audition. And you're I didn't know that he was capable of this, because obviously it's not his character, but and it's also a very interesting problem because it's this is serious and everyone's kind of scared of the airlines and everything right now. So the fact that he's dealing with something like that, but has to make it as absurd as it needs to be for a Nathan Fielder product has been fascinating.
I'm all about uncomfortable comedy, and it's not a TV show, but I did just see Friendship, the Tim Robinson, Paul Rudd movie, and so I feel there's a lot of carryover there. If you like the rehearsal, I think you'd like Friendship, but that was good. That was old school, an entire theater full of people laughing hard. I feel like it's been a while since I've seen a comedy like that, so that was a good one too.
I've been dying to see Friendships. I'm out in the boonies, so it's not in any of these theaters, but whenever it comes out, that's at the top of my list. All right, brother, let's get into some football. So the reason I invited you here today was because you and friend of the show, JP Acosta, we actually had on earlier today, did come out with your head coach rankings. I really, honestly, as someone who has been under fire recently for a take I had, and it's one of those where it's if you watch the pod, you'll get it. If you see the graphic, then I can see you going into a tizzy. I know some Patriots fans were Vrabel 18th, what is going on? I watched the show. I really did appreciate your position and JP's perspective. So please let the people know in this NFL Daily's coaches draft why Mike Vrabel was 18th, what the parameters were, and just give us a better understanding of what the exercise was.
Yeah, we were going back and forth, kind of drafting guys, and that turned out to be our ranking. And it was, basically who we'd want to hire as a coach, kind of taking all the situations, just making it in a vacuum. And I was surprised how many coaches I liked, like Vrabel, who ended up so low. I think Todd Bowles is a good head coach. He ended up 20th. And I left the exercise thinking NFL coaching is actually in a good place overall. There aren't a lot of coaches that I look like that are really taking a ton off the table. But Vrabel, and we can get into it, I don't know if he was adding enough to the table, at least compared to some of the guys in the top 12, 13, 14 coaches.
That's valid because we spoke to JP. It really added more context because, like, if you're drafting Mike Vrabel to a team, I could see his value not being as enticing. He just happened to go to a situation that very early on seems like the perfect one for him, where he just aced the draft, had a great offseason. He's got the offensive coordinator, likely forever. I don't know if anybody's offering Josh McDaniels any more head coaching jobs, but I'm curious what you think the edge is that Mike Vrabel brings, but also some things that you're looking to see in his tenure with the Patriots, given the situation he's in.
Yeah, I do want to explain why he was a little lower. Now, the edge is going to be he's been good in game management, and I think he's a person, and you've seen it, I'm sure, Tayler, already, that can be in charge of an organization, that can be in charge of an entire building, that can get everyone on the same page, all the different departments, getting them working together, and the coaching staff, and that's huge. So I kind of put him in a bucket of coaches, maybe like a Dan Campbell or a Mike Tomlin. Not that Mike Tomlin isn't a defensive guy, he is, but that maybe that's their best trait. Now, what he's not doing, and what I favored in general, were guys that brought schematic advantages and can do that would be the best case scenario. And to me, I went back and I looked at his DVOA. So that's just a clean and easy kind of efficiency metric overall of the teams that he's coached defensively, because he's a defensive guy. And I'm ready for this show. You ready for it? This is going backwards in Tennessee from his last year there. 18th, 19th, 10th, 28th, 17th, 17th. And then I remember the year he was a coordinator for the Texans, they were one of the worst defenses in the league. So to me, he's not shown that he is bringing a schematic advantage on his side of the ball. So you're really leaning on everything else, and he's good at everything else, I think. But the other, little thing that was in my head too was, he didn't get along with his GMs ultimately. Like, there were problems there. And so that was just like a little bit of a tiebreaker between him and some other guys. Like, him and Dan Quinn to me were very similar, but to me, Dan Quinn just had his second, team that he got to run, very similar type of resume to Mike Vrabel, but he's coming off a great year. So he just got like a little bit of an edge.
And you're literally hoping the Patriots have that Dan Quinn type season with Mike Vrabel.
I think they will. I think they might. Yes.
And the schematic advantage is totally fair. Like, I think it's slightly overrated, like the head coach that also calls plays, because there's so few who actually do it at a high level where you go in the year and say, like, this guy's team is probably going to make it to some kind of championship game or something like that. But with this situation that Vrabel has, he's got the McDaniels. I'm curious how you felt about McDaniels coming back to Foxboro, things you'd like to see him maybe get better at. Because with Vrabel and McDaniels, obviously they're returning for their own reasons, even if there are a lot of things they're able to bring in their own rights.
Yeah, I feel like rare among Patriots fans. And, I have a different relationship after covering the league for so long in terms of being a fan, but I grew up a Patriots fan and I am a fan. I felt like when this all happened, it just, especially after Belichick and Mayo, and just, to me, it all felt so stale and the same over and over that I didn't like. My initial instinct was, man, more of the same coaching tree and the same sort of ideas. That said, I'm also the guy who also would be pointing out like what a schematic advantage, an excellent coordinator, Josh McDaniels, was in New England. And it's not all just because of Brady. You had some other years and with backups too. So I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth that I think he's obviously an experienced coordinator, and I want to see what he can do in this NFL 2025 that's going to be different. But I think all things considered, whatever the options were going to be, it was a good hire. And, more inspired than say the last couple ones that Vrabel had in Tennessee, which I was using like as a little bit of a knock. I'm sounding negative, but you're making me, defend why he was like a little below like a Sean McDermott, who, to me has provided like a schematic advantage. And it's won a lot of games, won a lot of playoff games, which Vrabel, in 5 seasons, like they won games too, but they won a playoff game one time. It's not like a crazy high level of success.
And I still like the league-wide perspective, though, because like we can very much live in our little like incubator here where it's all of the, Belichickian stuff. But even still, Mike Vrabel does bring a different kind of a vibe there, but making his job easier, making Josh McDaniels' life easier, having Drake Maye at quarterback, right? Because at the end of the day, you can scheme up everything you want. You can make all the decisions you want. But on the offensive side of the ball, the quarterback more often than not is going to dictate your success. What did you think of Drake Maye in year one, maybe relative to what you thought of him before the Patriots took him? Or actually, were you on the Drake Maye bandwagon? Did you want Jaden Daniels, or what were your thoughts on him pre-draft?
I was very much on the Drake Maye bandwagon. I was almost sort of, I mean, this will sound cowardly to your listeners, but kind of out on the Patriots of being, I was just like, I've watched football, I've watched all these sports, and I was kind of like, I knew the minute Brady left, and especially after Belichick left, but even Brady, I was like, it is lit, like, you hit the lottery if you're a Patriots fan. You could have lived 50 different lives, and you would have not ended up living in the time period where you got the greatest run of success in football history. So when Brady left, I was kind of like, you're never going to top that. What's the point of chasing something that's going to go less than that? I was less into it. And then Drake Maye came along because going into that draft, before I knew the Patriots would land him, like even during that season, I thought he's right there with Caleb Williams as the two most exciting quarterback prospects. You know, I would go back as far as like Andrew Luck. Like I was that excited about those two guys. Maybe there were some others at their level. I wasn't a huge Trevor Lawrence guy coming out, so to me he wasn't at that level. Just two guys who I like coming out I was so excited about before we even got to the end of their college year. And the Patriots were zooming towards being in position to take them. And when they beat the Broncos in that, what was it, Christmas Eve game, I was so disappointed because I was like, they blew their chance to get Drake Maye. And so when they landed him, my expectations were pretty high ultimately, and I was just pumped and totally back in because they had this quarterback that I was gonna be rooting for and really like love watching no matter what team he was on.
I remember the Giants game that they lost on like the missed Chad Ryland field goal. I'm in the press box. The mood is terrible with all the Patriots people. It's like, oh, they're losing again. I'm hype. I'm like, they're in the sweepstakes. Like, let's get excited, people. We know what wins at this point. So I was right there with you. I think I was at my girlfriend's parents' house, and everyone's just around me asking about the game. Like, oh, do you want them to win? I'm just like, no, I don't. Please leave me alone. Like, this is not good. Do not congratulate me. But on the bright side, Drake Maye did show the promise that we were thinking as a rookie. What are you hoping to see from him, though, like that next step in year two? Because he was super exciting, but it wasn't perfect. And frankly, I didn't think his season ended the way it ideally could have. Now, he didn't even play the last game. That's a big part of it. But what do you want to see him in terms of growth and maybe with Josh McDaniels?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I didn't really even answer your question because I went on and on so much about how excited I was. I thought his rookie season helped confirm everything that I thought going into it. I thought the situation was so tough. I'm looking forward to going back and kind of rewatching some of the coaches' film. But this
are you really? You're looking forward to it?
I am, because it's Drake Maye. It's quarterback play. That's what I love to do. Like I just watched like 4 games of Brock Purdy, and I was just like, man, people. Sometimes it takes doing that, really focusing. I was like, people don't realize what a good quarterback this is, and I know I'm going to feel that way, and then some with Drake Maye because. To me, having watched so many rookies come into the league, I used to do this exercise called QB Index where I'd watch all the quarterbacks like every week on Coach's Film. I don't think people understand how difficult it is to be a rookie quarterback. And so to be a rookie quarterback like Drake Maye was in that situation, it wasn't perfect. And the accuracy occasionally is just scattershot in a way that, you know, you don't love. But man, everything I wanted to see, I saw it. And I thought the way he handled it was awesome. Like I didn't change my ceiling or my feeling about Drake Maye at all. I thought it was like so almost incomparably difficult what he was thrown into, and that he played really well. That I really thought that if you just evaluate the play because of his skill set, he was already like a top 20 NFL quarterback, and to do that in those surroundings. As a rookie, to me was really impressive. And so this year in this situation, we'll see. Like I'm going to give him some grace that, you know, it's not always like a linear progression into new offense. But I expect to see a jump because I think the players around him and the protection, especially being better, is only going to help him, obviously.
And there was like every reason for him to look like a deer in headlights, like half of the time. The number of times, and I will say Alex Van Pelt did a really good job, obviously developing him, making sure he protected him early on, where like Drake talks about all the time. I would not have been as effective if I had started from week 1. So I just feel like I need to give Alex Van Pelt credit anytime I can because he's going to be forgotten about, you know, as this Drake Maye, Josh McDaniels ship takes off. But what he was able to do to give Drake the confidence to, you know, when the Rams send that all-out blitz down the pipe, he's like, you know what, I'm just going to hold it for a tick, and then hit the next window to Demario Douglas. Like
that's good to hear because I was a hater, and I think it was just I was protective of Drake Maye and just thinking that basically he got all these like second rate or like third choice type of coaches and just like offensive line, obviously, and people around him, that I threw Alex Van Pelt into the mix. But you're the man on the ground there, and I trust your opinion more than
That's
mine.
still fair, though. That's still fair. Because, like, with Josh McDaniels, there's an attention to detail. There's an experience level. There's an adaptability that just Alex Van Pelt didn't have. No knock on him. It was his first time as a real OC, but you obviously see where the difference is. But Drake Maye can't do it alone. Now, free agency, they did a pretty good job with what they had. It was not a good offensive free agent class. They bring in Morgan Moses to help kind of shore up the offensive line. Garrett Bradbury, obviously, not ideal, but at least someone who's done it before, where you're not starting Ben Brown this year. So the offensive moves were solid. Also, Matt Collins and Stephon Diggs. So you at least have the guys that you can put on the field and say, we're not asking our rookies, other than Will Campbell, the fourth pick, to go out there and just be these crazy productive players, because that's not fair like it was last year. But how do you feel they did addressing the offense through the draft? You got Kyle Williams, Travion Henderson, again, Campbell, just with the firepower they've surrounded with Drake. Do you feel more confident than you did going into last season?
Oh yeah. I mean, they attacked it aggressively. Like they had a strong offseason. Now, look, it would have looked different if they ended up with Chris Godwin or Ronnie Stanley, two guys they were, reported to have been in the mix for, but who knows? Maybe you don't end up with Milton Williams in that scenario. And that was probably my favorite free agent that they picked up. So yeah, on the offensive side, Kyle Williams going into the draft was like my guy. So it's the second straight year. Maybe me, and Elliot Wolf on the same page here, or Mike Vrabel in this case. Like, I was really excited for them to get Kyle Williams. Think he has like a high ceiling. Travion Henderson, I think, is gonna be a guy who translates well. It was a surprising pick to me, but I think he's going to help Drake Maye out, and they need to help him in any way. Will Campbell, I had some questions on, and I think they were in a tough spot with the fourth pick there in a draft where there was like three really elite players, and so we'll see on him. But I like Jared Wilson too. That was a third round pick, and I just like they made the types of moves I was begging them to do last year, which was like a Morgan Moses type of signing, with just like someone that can play, that's like a grown up in the room. Not that he's going to change your world, but a guy that's played and played well enough, and you're hoping that the coaching can do the rest of it. Now, all that said, like, even though it's really better, if I was doing an exercise where I'm like ranking offensive lines and ranking, wide receiver tight end groups, like they're pretty low on those rankings compared to the other 32 teams out there until proven otherwise, right? So it's not like he's loaded around him, even if it's better. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing, because it is all about being proven. Because I don't think the issue with the offensive line or the wide receiver course, they don't have talent. Like, they drafted guys pretty high. Caden Wallace, Slayton Robinson, Javon Baker, Jalen Pope. These aren't guys that people said weren't talented. It was just you're throwing offensive linemen into the fire. Caden Wallace gets hurt, and both of your rookie receivers have no confidence at all and can't produce on the field. How much do you think the floor has raised with the veterans that they have? And maybe how much higher can it be if a Kyle Williams and a Jalen Polk, maybe even say a Layden Robinson, are able to step up and give you some explosiveness at some different spots?
Well, yeah, use a good word there, floor. And that to me is what Vrabel provides, is just a level of detail and professionalism. Even listening to one of your colleagues, one of my oldest buddies, Tom Curran in the business, who I worked with way back in the day at NBC, talking about like that first OTA, that just the pace of it, and just it's going to be a different era. And I think the coaching really raises the floor. Now, in terms of the ceiling, like that's where, if you're lining up all these players, when I'm talking about other teams, like how many of these guys would even be number 2 receivers on other teams in the league? Almost, maybe none of them coming into the league. There aren't many teams where they would be the number 2. Now, Kyle Williams, has a high ceiling, I think, for a third round pick. I think Kendrick Bourne actually has a sneaky high ceiling for a guy who isn't even guaranteed, I guess, to make the team. Obviously, if Diggs can get healthy and everything, Travion Henderson has a higher ceiling. But to me, it's going to be Drake Maye and the floor that the pickups and that the coaches provide. Drake Maye is your ceiling. He's the one that's got to rise, everyone else up, and I think he can do that.
Prizepicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prizepicks, and you can cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prizepicks. So don't miss your last chance to add your players from the court to your Prizepicks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, or anything else, pick more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Think Connor McDavid will get more than 1 goal next week? Will Brad Marchand hit for more than 5 shots on goal? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this hockey season when you and your crew run your game on Prizepicks. And all you got to do is download the app today, create an account, and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. Prizepicks, run your game.
So hear me out, because when I think of what this offense could be this year, I keep coming back to 2021. Which was a version of Josh's offense. And I don't even, obviously, with the pocket quarterback, he was so inhibited. And even going back, like, we thought that it was 2023, really, when Matt kind of got the yips and he stopped throwing downfield. You can go back to 2021 and see how many times they could have had more explosive plays and they didn't. But even with that supporting cast, where you have a quarterback who probably does less to help you than he does to, like, make everyone around him better, I would argue a deeper receiving core. And as good as that top offensive line was that year, no one but David Andrews started every game. Most guys missed at least 2, and there were a lot of rotations. So when you're thinking about the 2021 offense, able to still be a good offense and even make the playoffs, could you see them being better, or would you expect them to be around the same area now that they've got Drake Maye? And I would say at least a comparable supporting cast around him.
Yeah, that's a good comp, I think. When you're thinking about those teams, I'm thinking about the COVID year team, and I mean, we had a lot of fun here with Cam Newton. That was a wild moment in time.
People forget about that, honestly.
They were pretty good. They were pretty good. It's one of the reasons why I love Drake Maye on the Patriots, because just since I was a kid, like, I've wanted a running quarterback. I always, it's fun to have quarterbacks that are athletic. Not that you didn't love having the best quarterback of all time in Tom Brady, but it was fun to see. And that was what Cam Newton brought to the table. And I think that's a fair comp, 2021, that they could be as good or better. That's the best case scenario for the overall group. And I think, like a lot of things, the schedule helps. And, just thinking about the Patriots before we talk, I really think, like, the bounce back of veteran players is maybe the biggest X factor on the team. Like, is Onwenu, like, playing to his level? Like, is Kyle Duggar playing to his level? Is Barmore back and being, like, the best Barmore we've seen? I can't believe I'm bringing up Kendrick Bourne for the second time, but he's like a year further away from that ACL surgery than Diggs is. And if you get, like, the best version of Kendrick Bourne, like, that's a really helpful player. So to me, a lot of it is some guys that maybe didn't play their best a year ago that are still on the roster. Can this coaching staff get more out of them too, not just the rookies and the free agents?
It's kind of a perfect transition, actually, to the defensive side of the ball, because another reason that I personally am pretty optimistic about this team is I think this is going to be a top defense. I said something similar last year, and I was kind of screwed by no Christian Barmore, no Matthew Judon, the coaching staff not being as competent as we thought they'd be. And even at Terrell Williams, it's a first-year defensive coordinator, isn't able to be around the team right now due to health reasons, but at least it's a staff that knows each other. And they weren't known for necessarily making the best of all their talent or raising the talent of some guys who weren't great, but those were still competitive defenses that you weren't sleeping on. So now that the Patriots on paper, or obviously on the field, actually have Christian Barmore back, have added Milton Williams, and then also veterans like Robert Spillane, Harold Landry, who are familiar with this kind of Titan system, and then Braden Swinson, Joshua Farmer, maybe even Elijah Ponder through the draft. Can't forget Craig Woodson either. God, it's you think about the offense, but the defense they address pretty well as well. But how do you feel about this defensive unit as well? One, under Mike Vrabel and a new staff, but also with a much deeper defensive front and a couple more pieces on the back end.
Yeah, weirdly, I think it's the bigger variable compared to the offense. The offense with Drake Maye and McDaniels, like, I don't think they have a chance to be like a top 8 offense, and yet I think their floor is decently high because I believe in Maye and McDaniels. The defense, one of the things that I found to be true covering the league is it's more unpredictable. It goes up and down more. It's whether the players are more than the sum of their parts in a given year or the coaching staff. The parts, as you mentioned, starting with Christian Gonzalez. I mean, starting your defense with maybe a top 2 cornerback in the league. I would put him there with Surtain. Those would be my top 2 right now. Man, I mean, that's a great way to start with some real professionals up front, and you're hoping that the free agents work out. Now, I'm assuming half the free agents won't work out, because that's what we get all excited about this time of year, but that's just what history tells us. But if you get 2+ starters or like guys beating expectations out of that 4 or 5 starting, defensive players that they picked up group. And the others are like, okay, not total bust, or they're just like healthy enough. Like that's still a big upgrade from a year ago. So to me, I'm with you. I think I was very optimistic about the Patriots defense a year ago. That didn't happen. Like, their ceiling is extremely high, but you could also tell me that we get another Vrabel DVOA 18th, and like that's possible too. Like, I don't see why not. I've just seen stuff like that happen too, and it's a lot of new players coming together. Sometimes it takes a little while for it all to gel.
You're hoping that the veterans and, again, the continuity on the coaching staff helps. But at the same time, if you're looking at it on the other end of the spectrum, there is every chance that doesn't work out.
Like, they could be top 5, though. Like, it is possible. Whereas, like, I don't think offensively you have any chance for top 5. Defensively, like, it's possible if it all really comes together. But I was thinking, last year with the Seahawks, good defensive coaching staff, good players. They hit their stride about week 10 with a new coaching staff, a new system and stuff. And, like, sometimes it takes time. That's part of it, too.
What do you think about the defensive front specifically? Because I think that really is going to be the reason that this is one of the better defensive lines. And Christian's Barmore's health is a big part of this. You're hoping that Milton Williams, like, he's been an elite run defender, he's been an elite pass rusher. Can he, super say or little fusion, oh my God, Dragon Ball Z fusion and just become like that one player? We don't know. And even though the depth at the edge, they don't have the guy, right? They don't have that Judon. But it feels like they've added with Landry, Chason, Swinson, Ponder. And even Anthony Jennings. There's just more bodies there, whereas in the past, it was like Jennings and a bunch of guys who couldn't get after the passers. So are you more optimistic? Are you still pretty skeptical? How are you feeling about that front?
No, I feel good because I'm very high on Barmore. I mean, if he's anywhere close to back to where he was, that was a guy that you absolutely build around. And then Milton Williams, that is the time of year I have the time to watch all these games on Coach's Film. And he literally was the best player on the Eagles defense in the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. I mean, it was just a crazy playoff run. I know he wasn't at that level for his whole 4-year contract or anything, but there's every reason to be excited about him as a plus starter. Harold Landry, to me, was a guy who was surprising the amount that he got. He's going to help them. And then Keon White, I think, is kind of the ultimate X factor. You did a good job, though, mentioning just the depth that they do have different options. If every single piece doesn't work out perfectly, I do think they have pretty good depth. And I think that's where the strength of, the defense really is going to be. If they start as good as they can be up front, the rest will fall into place, especially with the cornerback duo that they have.
I also was able to list a bunch of players and had the privilege of forgetting Keon White and Christian Gonzalez when I named them off. So again, that's just a level of depth this team has not had in a while. Now I want to get into something we can get a little bit more rosy. All right, let's talk about some potential breakout candidates. We can go with one on offense. We can go with one on defense. Who are some guys on both sides of the ball that you think, whether it's because of the coaching staff, the surroundings, whatever, could really have their breakout season this year? Doesn't have to be a second-year player either.
Yeah, I know, because I think Demario Douglas fits, and I guess I don't know if that counts as a breakout player, but I think him getting to another level to me is more likely than a Kyle Williams coming in and like being a huge difference maker. I do believe in a world where like Demario Douglas can have like an 85, 90 catch season, a 1,100, 1,200 yard season, and really make a lot of game-winning plays. I do think Keon White's the obvious choice. You could tell me better on the defensive side that it did seem like he's a little bit of a boomer bust player, maybe not always like on the assignment that you want, but I do think it goes back. It's funny because I'm trying to think of breakout players on the team, and I thought about it ahead of time, and they are an interesting roster where it's like the rookies are really interesting, and then like I said, the bounce back veteran candidates are really interesting, but there's not as much like young rising players, which kind of speaks to their recent drafts. But Keon White would have to be that guy where I know he got a lot of love last year. I wasn't totally sure that he was like a consistent winning plus starter yet.
I can add some context there because the Keon White situation over the past 2 years has been fascinating. So year one, he's clearly this just ball of athleticism and rage. You see it in week 1 against Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. His issue was he just wasn't really finishing plays. Like he's getting in the backfield, but he's going right past the running back or like flying past the quarterback. Year 2, you started to see him with more control, and you saw it in the sack numbers where he's actually finishing plays. He's making tackles behind the line of scrimmage. you also started noticing once teams were like, oh, he's the only, and he was elite as an interior rusher. Like, I think he was 5% higher, and it was limited, but he was like 5% or 3% higher than the next closest guy. It wasn't close. Like, he is the most athletic interior pass rusher in the NFL. The issue was he was their only pass rusher.
That's a big statement. That's a big statement.
No, I'm saying, like, if you just look at the numbers and also just watch. I got the cut-ups, Greg. You can go on.
I've watched him. I've watched him. That's the thing. But I'm like, is he always like, it feels like sometimes he's maybe one of those guys at least that drove that coaching staff a little crazy. Just maybe just off doing his own thing sometimes. I don't know.
And that might be it. So I think that as he started getting doubled a lot, as his consistency on the edge started to wane, I think maybe he just wasn't as locked in. And I also think the coaching staff didn't mesh well because towards the end of the season, he kept talking about, like, I want to be coached hard, da-da-da-da. And it was like, so you want to be, you're not saying you are. So I honestly think maybe at some point, and this is speculation, maybe he just lost the motivation quite as much that he had. So I'm hoping with this Terrell Williams, who's known as like a leader of men and that kind of guy, and someone who has a long track record of success with defensive linemen, if you can get Keon to play a little bit more under control, you don't want to completely turn him into a different player, a little bit more control and more consistency on the edge. And I think that's where this defensive line is like top 5.
Right. And I know Patriots fans aren't going to want to hear it because of the money that Milton Williams got, and the money is one thing. That's how much you have to pay in free agency. There's so few good young rising players available in free agency. He was literally my number 1 overall free agent by the time we actually got to free agency and the franchise tags were gone and the re-signed. He was the number 1 player. But to me, he's a breakout candidate because he's actually just been a 400 to 500 snap type of guy that broke out and had a great playoff run. But if he's like a Pro Bowler, and I believe like you're going to get the best years of Milton Williams' career the next few years. If he's a Pro Bowler, bordering or an All-Pro type of player, I mean, that's a breakout player. He has not been that guy, and it's weird because you gave him all that money. But to me, like that's a big X factor for them too, and makes a big difference for them.
And I would even argue that Barmore would be a guy who makes more sense as an All-Pro or a Pro Bowler and could also have a breakout year, because you still have people talking about Barmore like he's good. You know, he's good, but maybe he'll get there.
Great.
And it's like, no, you watch that breakout year where he's two-gapping. No one is taking him out of his gap. He's like splitting double teams. He's getting sacks on quick throws. He's affecting on play action. Like, legitimate, and there's so many good defensive tackles. I completely understood why he wasn't a Pro Bowler, but he, in any given year, could be one of the best defensive tackles in football. And unlike Milton Williams, he has the size. We're like, Milton's undersized, but he's so strong, it makes up for it. Now, Barmore has every box checked off. It's really just a matter of staying on the field for me with him.
You're getting me fired up. I think I've been probably the biggest fan thing about me this offseason is almost just seeing what's going on in New England and being like, all right, everyone calm down a little bit. Like, you're like, what? They were so bad the last couple of years. Like, let's not just assume they're going to be great, because it is hard to like mix a lot of new stuff together. It's like, to me, if Drake Maye has a good season and they won 7 games, like personally, I'd be happy. All I really care about is Drake Maye and like some like level of professionalism, and that you're like back to being a real NFL team. That'd be fine for me. Now, yeah, they could be better, and they very well might, partly because of the schedule. But like those are the things I'm focused on. But you're getting me hyped up that like maybe everyone's right. Maybe their over under should be this high. It's a little out of control though.
If it wasn't but for the schedule, because like in my predictions or like the games I thought they'd win, I didn't have them beating any playoff team but the Bills, only because the Bills are going to be coming off the Bengals game and the Patriots are coming off a bye. And if you have Mike Vrabel, and at that point in the year, you're hoping, especially they've been playing Buffalo pretty closely. But here's one thing I'm curious on. Again, as someone who has had perspective on the whole league, what about the Patriots would prevent them from making the kind of jump we saw from the Texans 2 years ago or the Commanders last year?
Oh, man. I mean,
and there's a lot of luck involved. I cannot emphasize enough.
Right.
Like,
that it's football. That it's football. That it's like
right.
a one, you only play 17 games. And yeah, I think I do go back to the schematic advantage a little bit. Like everything I talked about like, I think Patriots fans are understandably excited that everything is better. But does that mean that it's better than average? Like, I have my doubts if they were in a tougher division, like talent-wise, coaching-wise, like. And so if we're talking about average, I think that's a more realistic expectation. I think probably the number one thing, though, that would get in their way is that if Drake Maye took a little longer to adjust to a scheme that is just going to be new for him. And I don't expect that to happen, but man, I would have never expected CJ Stroud to have the season that he had as a sophomore. And there were reasons for that. But look, this Patriots are 1 or 2 injuries away from the offensive line potentially being a total disaster again. And like that, I guess that's probably like the easiest route towards it not working.
That's fair. And again, I cannot emphasize enough. If they like win 12 games, I'm not saying this version of the team would win 12 games consistently. I am not saying that. It's just that because the division's kind of weak, their schedule, I have them a sunny 12. I think more realistically, I think they're like a 11-win team. I do.
Wow.
I do.
See, I'm still just around 8 or 9, and my reason for that, and they could be better than that, and that wouldn't be like a surprise to me. We've seen some pretty, frankly, mediocre 10 or 11 win teams occasionally because of the schedule that end up getting bounced in the wild card. And so that doesn't mean you're like a great team.
Right.
My thing is looking at the division. I think people are too quick to just be dismissing the Dolphins and the Jets. I see the Bills as like the consistent team, obviously. And they have Josh Allen. They have a consistent coach in Sean McDermott. To me, I had him 12th. People got on me saying he was too high. I'm like, do you see how many games they win every year? They're a top 10 defense. He provides a schematic advantage, at least in the regular season defensively. Like year after year, they're getting it done. Anyways, that's them. To me, the other 3 teams, I guess I've seen seasons play out so many times that like, I think they're all closer to each other, the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Jets, than they are like further apart. So if you told me that they're all in the same ballpark of 7, 8 wins, 8, 9 wins, I think the Jets especially are in a better, like they should not be 3 wins different than the Patriots in terms of win-loss. I actually could see them having a nice surprising season. And the Dolphins, I could see going the other way, completely collapsing. But they've shown the last couple of years they have a baseline of talent too. That like I see those 2-3 teams close. And if the Patriots end up ahead of those 2 teams, that should be a winning season, whether it's like 8 wins, 9 wins, whatever it is.
That's absolutely fair. And if it weren't for Justin Fields, I would be much more intimidated by the Jets. But it's just like, I'm sorry. I do not think that the Patriots with Drake Maye on the other side, and I understand like it's not just the quarterbacks. There's a lot of other factors, and the Jets are like a well-built team in a lot of areas, offensive line, defense, like
right.
Yes, but it's Justin Fields. Like if we're talking about the fourth quarter and you have Drake Maye and Justin Fields, I don't really care about the supporting cast. I don't care about the defense. If you lose that game, I lose a little bit of respect for you as a head coach outside of like outside of the extenuating circumstances that happen. But like, I mean, that's just
you're crazy. Football is just so much more unpredictable. Like they have a much better offensive line than the Patriots. They have a chance. 100%. They have a chance to have like a top 5 offensive line. I'm putting a lot of stock into the magical like Detroit Lions sprinkles that Aaron Glenn's going to put on that organization, which maybe it's not strong enough to get rid of whatever has been plaguing, the Jets for the last, 30 years. But I'm like excited that they're sort of building offense around Fields' strength. Like he has some good weapons in terms of Wilson and the running backs. And you mentioned it, there are talented players on the defense. So it's like, to me, I don't know. I could squint and see any of those teams kind of being that 10 or 11 win surprise AFC East teams. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Patriots, but it's after saying all that, like they probably are the most likely of those 3 teams. I'll give you that to have that season. I'll give you that.
All right, so let's wrap it up with some AFC East rankings then. All right, I think we know the Bills are the kings of the castle. They're, they got to get knocked off first. Who's coming in second, third, and fourth, though? And like you said, it is interesting the way this could play out this year.
Right. That was my larger point, was those 3 to me are in the same bucket, but I'm going to have the Patriots second. I think they are the most likely team to be second. I just think it's like 40%, 30%, 30%. I really don't think it's like a huge difference. But I'm definitely playing to the crowd here. I can't go on your show and say the Patriots are going to come in last, but I will, because I'm high on the Jets. I'll put them in third. And I do think the Dolphins are a weird team where they could win 10 or 11 games, or you could tell me they're the number 2 pick next year. And like that wouldn't they have total blow up potential there. So I'll put them in last place. Why not?
I just don't see them as that kind of tough, gritty team where like the Jets, I think all of these division games are going to be pretty close because they're all competitive. But like, if we're talking about Mike McDaniel and Aaron Glenn, and just if you take on the personality of your coach, I would rather play a Mike McDaniel team, just me personally. All right, buddy, let's wrap up with ceiling and floor predictions for the Patriots. Maybe I've helped you get a little bit more of a rosy outlook for the ceiling, but seriously, you have a better perspective on how the entire NFL offseason is gone. So in terms of where the Patriots rank, what do you think is their best and worst case scenario?
If I have any better perspective than you, Taylor, and I don't think I do, certainly not on the Patriots, but in general, it's just that I'm old enough to know I don't know anything in the offseason. That none of us know anything. And that's why, like, it's just you get wrong so many times, like being overconfident in the offseason, that you just wait and see how it plays out. But I would say the ceiling for them, to me, would be like 11 wins. I would not go 12. That would be the ceiling. And what you're saying, say the floor too?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be like the entire defense gets hurt like last year.
Right.
But
if everything is normal-ish, like 6 wins to me would be the floor. That's why I started with the whole, like, as long as Drake Maye looks good, if they lose a bunch of close games and they're just like not quite there yet and they're 7-10, like, just think about what you've watched the last couple of years, Patriots fans. Like, it's okay. The schedule is really the main thing. Occasionally schedules that look really easy don't end up being that easy. But if it's as easy as it looks, then that should boost them a couple extra wins. And that's why I get the 8.5 over under. Honestly, that sounds about right to me.
I feel like I'm 1 or 2 years away from the level of cynicism I need to cover this team at like the idea level, but I still need to take my shots. But I know it's a bit of a rosy outlook, but like you said, at the end of the day, if they're better than they've been recently and Drake Maye looks good, I mean, it's going to be hard to be truly disappointed.
You know what, though? You got to just pick your spots. You never know. You want to be right when you're right. This might be the year to be right. I actually had them in the playoffs, I remember, going into 2021, and I felt like that year people were not in on them. I was like, you know what? I think they're okay this year. Mac will be pretty good. And, you know, they weren't a great team, but they did make the playoffs. So sometimes it pays off to be optimistic. This year, I'm just like, okay, well, 8 or 9 wins is good.
And that's fair after the past couple of years. But, Greg, you've already been gracious enough with your time. Let me get you out of here. But before I do, please remind the people where they can find you and let us know what you got coming down the pipeline that we should be looking out for.
Yeah, NFL Daily. We're cranking. It's on wherever we get your podcast. It's on YouTube. You can subscribe there. And that's it. We got some fun projects for the summer and then take a little bit of a break before we do this whole thing again, Taylor.
Daily game, recognized daily game. Thanks again, Greg. This was a blast. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Now, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see you next time. Peace, y'all.